Hi guys, it's Celeste, and today I'm here to show you how I built my pink PC setup, which kind of went viral overnight.
PC, CPU.
This is my first ever custom build, so it's not perfect, and I do make a few mistakes.
But it didn't catch on fire when I built it, so
Before we start, I just want to say I'm not sponsored by or affiliated with any of the brands that you see in this video. When I built my PC, it was entirely my own money, so let's go! If you'd like to see my parts list for this build, you can find it on PCPARTPICKER.com, or you can just search up celestefleurs. The case that I'll be using for this build is the 4000D Airflow by Corsair. It's originally grey, but I'm going to spray paint it to make it pink. To make the case pink, I'll be using Rust-Oleum's Candy Pink spray paint. And for the top coat, I'll be using Tamiya Colour TS80 Flat for an ultra matte finish. I'll be protecting the case from rogue spray paint with frog tape around delicate areas, like the back feet, and covering the rest of it with paper. You don't have to do this, but I'm quite a messy painter, so I wanted to be careful. I also strongly recommend getting a primer, as you're going to need it to help with the adhesion of the paint to the surface of your case. When you're spray painting, it's important to look at your technique. For example, you don't really want to be doing short bursts of paint. If this happens, it's a really easy fix. You'll need some high grit sandpaper and to just gently rub out the drips. Start by doing this with the direction of the drip itself. Try and be careful not to remove too much of the paint around it, but keep doing this until the drips look flat. To spray paint, use long strokes. Spray until you reach the end of the part. Don't just stop in the middle. Timing is also something you have to look out for, as you want to do all of your coats within the hour, leaving about 10 to 15 minutes between coats. I did about 3 coats of pink paint and then 2 coats of the additional matte top coat. Leave those to dry for 24 hours and let them cure for 48 hours. Thankfully, the drips that I had on the front bezel are completely gone, and the matte top coat really gives it a gorgeous finish. Once the spray painting is done, I start to slowly untape the back feet of the case. And then I screw the front bezel back on. Now the case is reassembled, I'm removing the fan that came with it. I'm putting it somewhere safe, since I'm not going to be using it at all. The motherboard that I chose is the Asus ROG Strix B550A Gaming, and my CPU is the Ryzen 7 5700X. Since this is an AMD motherboard, all I have to do is lift up the little lever, place the CPU into the socket, and lower the lever down again. For the RAM, I chose the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro 16GB. And then I got the Western Digital Black SN750 1TB SSD for my storage. Here I'm putting in the RAM by lining it up and pushing it down. You'll want to put it in these 2 channels because they're the furthest away from the heat that's going to be generated by your CPU. With the SSD, I'm unscrewing the bracket, slotting it in at an angle, and then holding it down whilst I screw it into place. Then I'm simply screwing the bracket back on, and we're done with this part. Next up is my PinkFlow AIO cooler. You're going to want to install the pump bracket before moving forward. For this, you'll need the pump and the AMD bracket. The bracket should have a tiny arrow marked on it. Twist the bracket onto the back of the pump, and the arrow with the bracket should align with the pump. I'll start by removing the motherboard's original backplate by unscrewing these black brackets on the front. Once this backplate is removed, I can install the new AMD backplate on the back of my board using the long screws. I'll then be dropping washers onto each, before fastening the threaded nuts into the screws. Before continuing, I'm installing the PinkFlow fans onto the radiator. They come with these little rubber sticky things that go in each of the corners on both sides of the fan, so just stick all of those in each corner. Then, grabbing my fan mounting screws, I'm just fastening both fans to the radiator. My PC is going to be using the radiator to draw in air through the fans and out the top, but consider your airflow when mounting any fans in your own build. When putting the motherboard into the case, check first if your case has motherboard standoffs already installed. If you're using the 4000D like me, then you can just go ahead and whack that bad boy in there. Do not install the radiator or the back fan before the motherboard, otherwise you're going to have to take it all back out again just like I did, because I have one brain cell apparently. Pretend the motherboard is already in the case here, but now I'm installing the radiator. Mine will be going on the top, and I'd already measured it to make sure it would fit. Thread the wires through to the back of the case and then hold your radiator in position as you're screwing it into place. Up next is thermal paste. I tried out two different methods here to show you what they both look like so you can pick which one you prefer. In my opinion, the best method is using the 4 dots. This provides the most coverage on the surface of the CPU to dissipate the heat. The single big dot doesn't quite reach into the corners of the CPU, but I'm quite sparing with my application. It's up to you though, just make sure you don't apply too much.
Nice!
And now, the fans. I bought an extra PinkFlow fan for the back of my case, along with the Corsair LL120 RGB Trio. Fans are pretty simple for the most part. All I have to do is thread the wires through to the back of the case and secure them with screws. For the pink fan, I'm just repeating exactly what I did earlier really. Screw that in and you're ready to go. Ah, look at her, she looks so good. Since my motherboard doesn't come with Wi-Fi, I got the Gigabyte Wi-Fi card. Since the TP ones were out of stock at the time, but I'd highly recommend them too. There's only 3 parts, so it's quite easy to set up. All I'm doing is connecting the USB to the header on the end. Then I'm removing the bottom PCIe bracket so the Wi-Fi card can fit in there instead. Thread that little USB cable under and then plug it into one of the USB headers on your motherboard. Like this. Then I'm taking the antenna for the Wi-Fi card and securing it at the back of the PC. You can put the antenna anywhere on the case since it's magnetic, so it's not going to be visible. That is unless you have it sticking out of the back like a little doggy tail. Do a little cable management and you'll never notice it's there. My PSU is the Corsair RM750X. It's a fully modular power supply, meaning all cables can be unplugged and removed, compared to a semi-modular PSU. You might have a cable or two left over that you don't end up using, and that's fine. I also grabbed some pink and white extension cables from Reaper Cable, but these are just an aesthetic thing and totally optional. I just think they look way nicer. Before we move on, here's the back of the PC with all the fan wires.
I couldn't record the motherboard connections because getting a good angle inside of the PC was just a bit too much. It was kind of really difficult to do, but I do have an AIO guide that details all of the connections and things like that, which might help you out if you're struggling with this. Moving on.
Putting in the PSU is the easy part and doesn't need too much explaining. The PSU goes in, slide it into the back, line it up, and break out your trusty screwdriver again. I'm starting with the 24-pin cable and plugging it into the slot beside the RAM. Don't be fooled, this cable took me 3 hours to get in. The CPU cable goes in at the top left of your motherboard. You can see the 24-pin and the CPU are coming down the back, and I've already plugged them in. By the way, I make a mistake here, and I plugged the 2 extensions into the PCIe cable when I only need the 1. You'd only need to plug in 2 if you had 2 graphics cards. I'm also taking the time to sort out and manage my PinkFlow cables and the RGB splitter, and tying these bits up into neat bundles. This case has slots that I'm able to fasten the zip ties to, which keeps them in place. And it's especially helpful for routing the cables along the bottom. A good rule for cables is that they're like cats. If it fits, it sits. So if it looks like it plugs in somewhere, it probably does. I'm not using a hard drive in my build, so I've got lots of space in the basement for all of my cables to be hidden away. Here, I'm plugging in all the SATA wires that I've left dangling from the AIO and the fans. I got really lucky with my GPU, and I managed to get a 3060 Ti Founders Edition. It matches the build really well because of the silver plating around the edges and just looks pretty sleek in my opinion. To install the GPU, I'm removing the top PCIe bracket, just like I did with the Wi-Fi card. And then the GPU slots into the PCIe slot at the same level. Make sure the tubes for the AIO aren't obstructing the graphics card. The tubes should ideally be going down into a loop shape.
Nice.
NVIDIA provides this extremely ugly 8-pin for the 3060 Ti, which throws off my entire build, but I have to plug it in anyway. My monitor is the pink weapon monitor, and I think it's my favourite ever purchase. After plugging in the power cable, connect the monitor to the display port on the GPU. And my pink PC build is complete. Here's what my setup currently looks like. For a first build, I'm really proud of how this went. When I booted up my PC for the first time, I downloaded nzxt cam to check on my temperatures. And even though this is 7 months later, they're still looking pretty breezy. With my PC, I had to flash the BIOS before I could get it to post. Thankfully, with this case, it's as simple as using a flash drive in the back of the PC and pressing the BIOS button. There's lots of guides online if you get stuck here. But once that's done, you can start enjoying your new PC build. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. This video took me such a long time to make, and it's my first time ever editing, so I'd really appreciate it. If there's anything you'd like to see, suggest it down below, and thank you so much for watching.